and I could see this body, and I was thinking, holy shit, he looks pretty rough. Um, and I could see blood everywhere, and I could see these two women like going back and forth, and it looked it looked pretty brutal. And then it dawned on me I wasn't looking at somebody else; it was actually me. And as soon as I realized that, I got rocketed straight up.
Welcome, everyone, to Our Sliver of Time. My name is Dave Sledge, and today we have a very special guest who had a near-death experience as a result of an accidental injury. Uh, Sean, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Thanks for having me on. I'm Sean. I'm 38. I'm a crane operator and a paramedic. Well, used to be a paramedic. And on June 11th, 2020, I accidentally killed myself. Um, so it was during the worst part of probably one of the worst parts of my life. Um, I had just lost my business. We're having to move out of our current place and into a condo that we had that I was busy fixing up on a shoestring budget, and the floor underneath there had actually washed away, so there was a sinkhole. So it was just a whole bunch of mess. I have two kids, and at the time I had a wife. And so we were busy that day. All I had left was um, to do a couple touch-ups with paint. And I was super tired because I'd been working full time, then going and working on the condo, and then coming back. And so I was just like super dead. I've been doing that for a couple months. And so I went downstairs into the basement, and I was looking for a 5-gallon pail of paint that the builders had left. And I went down there, and there was, and on the top there was this pull top, and I put my left hand on it, and then I should have went upstairs, and I thought about it too, and I was like, I should really go get a screwdriver from upstairs, but I was so tired. I was like, screw it. I'm just gonna use my pocket knife. So I pulled out a pocket knife, which was this is not the exact one, but it was this large. So it was pretty big. And I was using it to like pry, and I was prying because the whole thing was covered in paint, and I just couldn't pull it off. And all of a sudden, I went pop, and it went straight into my arm, and I ended up nicking right here. This is from the actual surgeon. I ended up going straight in here and nicked my artery. And if the funny thing is, if I had sliced it fully, it would have been fine because the arteries actually naturally retract and constrict. Blood started spurting out. My knife popped out right away. And the funny thing is, it didn't even hurt, which is really surprising. I always thought if getting stabbed it would hurt, but it didn't actually hurt at all. It was actually more surprising, and I slammed my hand down as quick as I could, trying to stop the bleeding, and but it's just pouring out. And so I quickly ran upstairs. Didn't get a drop of blood on the main floor, which was nice. As I was running, I was yelling at my wife to like, I messed up. We got to go. And so I ran outside, and she's running behind me, and I'm running towards the car, which is across the garage pad and across the road. And as I'm holding it, and I was like, we gotta go, we gotta go. Like, I didn't think it was that bad. And she's yelling at me. She's like, there's no way I'm driving you. And I turn around and I realize why, because there's no way, like the amount of blood is just like we need the paramedics there now. Like, I don't wouldn't have survived probably getting there, kind of thing.
So at first, you didn't think like it wasn't bleeding that much, but it was when you turned back you realized.
Well, yeah, because I was running, so, and I was holding, I wasn't really looking at it, and I didn't realize how much I was losing, to be honest. It looked like like a shot an elk. And I've seen from some of the accidents and stuff that I've witnessed and been a part of and everything. I've seen some crazy stuff, but not, it was an insane amount and very fast. Like, it was going from the basement to the car was less than 30 seconds. And already like the whole garage pad was covered. I unfortunately I don't have I'd share my pictures, but for somehow I lost them. But it was pretty rough. And yeah, so she's like, there's no way we're gonna make it. So she's like, I gotta call 911. So I went back over to my truck, dropped the tailgate, and I was resting on like this, and I was pushing so hard that I ended up snapping my muscles that were kind of cut, and it ended up going up into my shoulder and then up into my wrist. And it was filling up the back of the tailgate because there's all these indents on the back of the tailgate, and I started getting super woozy. So I went up against sat up against the garage door. And she was on the phone with 911, and they told I said, well, I should probably put on a tourniquet. And they said, no, don't put on a tourniquet for whatever reason. There's some weird things that happened with specifically with 911, like they're only 5 minutes away. And we got told they were only 5 minutes away, but it ended up taking 22 minutes for some reason. Um,
That is so bizarre that they said not to put on a tourniquet.
it is.
Why did they say that? That's so
I
interesting.
I don't know. I think it's because I kind of had to have this. This is my feeling on it, at least, that this is something I need to experience, and there is no way I was avoiding it. Because if I had stopped it, I don't think I would have had this quite had this experience. Because yeah, like I couldn't stop it with direct pressure. I couldn't stop it with elevation. So all the indicators are to put on a tourniquet, but they said don't. And I had lost so much that my mind was like, oh, okay, that sounds right. Like I couldn't even think, to be honest. And then I started getting everything started coming in white around the edges. And so I laid down and I got her to bring over a wagon, the kids' wagon, and I put myself in the recovery position. She had brought me a towel, and it was like I was holding it there and it was completely soaked. I started losing like my vision started I started losing my vision, and everything, all this white started coming in, and the voices started like drowning out because a neighbor had come over at the same time while she was on the phone with 911. And but all the smells got like insanely intense, and same with the feeling, like I could feel the sun beating down on me, like, and it felt so hot. It was almost like what I think what I think a plant would feel like when it's a really sunny day. Just like it was really nice. Like I could smell the copper and the dirt from around me and the concrete. It was really intense senses, except for my hearing. My hearing was fading out. And then all of a sudden, I was looking down at somebody, and I could see this body, and I was thinking, holy shit, he looks pretty rough. Um, and I could see blood everywhere, and I could see these two women like going back and forth, and it looked it looked pretty brutal. And then it dawned on me I wasn't looking at somebody else; it was actually me. And as soon as I realized that, I got rocketed straight up through the sky. Well, it felt like through the sky, through the clouds, through the stars, and then all of a sudden I was in this black space. Um, and there was a small light far away, right in the center. And it started coming to me, or I went towards it. I'm not sure. It could have been, I'm not sure if I was going towards it or if it was coming towards me, but it started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the way it looked to me is like if you took a drop of white ink from a height and dropped it on a black piece of paper. That's what it kind of looked like. So there was like tears and drips and drabs all over. So it wasn't like a perfect sphere. It was like kind of torn apart on the edges. And it might have, I don't know if it was light or liquid or something. But it was white, and it was coming towards me. And when I got fairly close, and it was pretty much the whole thing. It actually kind of reminds me of, have you seen Soul on Disney?
I have, yeah.
From Pixar. It kind of reminds me of that because I didn't see anybody else, but it felt like others were around me, like going towards as well. It's kind of like that scene where the little guy is running up the ramp towards the portal and stuff, or running away from it or whatever. It kind of felt like that, except I didn't see anybody
Wow.
else. And once it got really close, then all of a sudden I was in a meadow, and I was in this meadow. It was really beautiful. Uh, I wasn't very sentimental at the time. I was kind of an asshole before this. I was super stressed. Um, yeah, I was just I liked nature, but wouldn't say I would like revel in it. I like loved hunting, that sort of thing. Um, but when I was in this meadow, it was like I it felt overwhelmingly beautiful and awesome and loving and everything. And it was this meadow with um green grass with yellow grass, and there was about waist high to thigh high. There was beautiful, there was cute little butterflies, and like they were blue and pink, and then there's blue and pink and yellow flowers. Like it was super nice. And then off in the distance there was this like babbling brook and a single tree. Um, and it was kind of hilly, and I was thinking to myself, I was like, this is super stereotypical. And I remember thinking like this is like exactly what I was expecting for the like it just seemed like this is exactly what you'd see, right? And I was thinking that, and then all of a sudden harp music started playing. And it was like the most beautiful harp music I've ever heard. I wish I was a musician, but I don't think I would be able to replicate it. It was like multi-layered of harp almost. But and I've never heard anything like it since. It was just like super nice. And then
I could totally relate to that. You know, how you said it seemed almost typical because it's in my brief experience, which I won't take over your story. It is that typical sound you would hear at a church or, you know, it's
yeah,
out of a movie almost, right?
yeah, exactly. It felt like a movie. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. It
Wow.
was like it's like when an emotional moment happened in a movie, and then the orchestra starts like a John Williams score kind of thing. That's what it was, kind of
Yeah.
like that. It was really weird.
Wow.
Um, I've never actually thought about it like that. But yeah, that's kind of like what it was. Yeah, you're just like, okay, and now this is the emotional part. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really weird. And then all of a sudden I started feeling this presence around me. I don't know if it was one or two or three or something. And I couldn't see anything again. And all I could do was look straight forward. Like I couldn't move my head or anything. It was just like I had this like vision of this tableau kind of thing. And then these entities or beings or angels, or I don't know what they were, they started talking to me, but it was in a language I couldn't understand. But I did understand at the same time. The way I've been trying to explain it is like watching a movie. So I've been watching, just finished watching Shogun. And so the characters are speaking in Japanese, but underneath they have the subtitles. It's almost like that. So they were speaking to a language to me that I didn't understand, but I knew it as they were saying it. And it wasn't auditory; it was all mental. Like it was all like in my head. And they were saying to me that I have a choice, that I can go back or I can stay with them. And either choice is fine. There's no wrong choice. And I was like, immediately, I was like, well, I'm staying here. Uh, because at that point, I thought it was more of a burden, uh, felt like a failure, a screw up. I thought my kids would be better off without me, a whole bunch of stuff. And so like, and this place, all you could feel is like love and no judgment. And I felt wonderful actually. And so I was thinking, no, there's no way I'm coming back. And they said, well, before you make that decision, we have to show you something. And then I was transported into like instantly. It just switched to I was in a library. Um, and it was a giant library. If you ever see pictures of like St. Peter's Basilica, it's immense. It's huge. Bigger than almost seemed bigger than life. And there was these giant there was shelves of books going from floor to ceiling. And it was stories high, and on the ceiling there was paintings, and near the end there was like stained glass windows. And I can't really remember what the paintings or the stained glass looked like. But there was torches that lit everything, and then like those round candle lit like candelabras kind of thing going the length. And the books were huge. Actually, I have a new book. It's the book. It's about that size, that blue one back there. And so it's like fairly, they were fairly big, and then really thick and all leather bound. and couldn't really move or anything. And actually, then I started moving, and it wasn't like I was in control. It was just like kind of was getting like floated along. And then we took a right into another room, which was still really big, just way smaller than the hallway. And inside there was books that lined the walls again. It was kind of rounded, um, and they had some windows again, and wood paneling, wood floor, and wood ceiling. And in the center was a table with a single leg, and on top of it was a dome. And on this inside this dome, and it's really hard to describe this part because I have a sense of it what it is, but also I don't remember seeing it. It's kind of like a paradox almost, but I know what it is, but I don't remember seeing it. It's really weird. But there was these tree roots, and these tree roots were all my different life paths and all my different choices that I could have made. And it led into the tree trunk, and the tree trunk was my NDE, so it was my event. And there was a whole bunch of different ways and different choices to be able to get to this event. Some of them were easier than others, but this event was always going to happen, no matter what. Like this was always going to happen. And then that tree trunk led to branches, and those branches were choices that were going to happen further down the road, or like right after this. And there was tons of choices, and then those tree branches turned into tree roots, and then back into a tree trunk, and it just kept going like that. Um, and showing that there's really no bad choices, there's just choices. And so it's kind of like a mix between destiny and free will. And the thing I can liken it to the most is watched Spider-Man Across the Universe with the kids. And they talk about Spider-Man having the canon events. It's really similar to that. So in that, if you kind of want to understand what that is, if you watch that movie, there's these canon events that Peter Parker or any of the Spider-Mans have to hit in order to make the choices and the changes in their lives to become that person. It's kind of similar. I recently talked to a person that's a buddy that I just met randomly, and he had a similar NDE where he actually saw a tree as well. So it's super interesting. I haven't heard a lot of people with a tree thing, but it was really interesting talking to him. His was a little bit different than mine. Yeah. So then they told me that so they said, yeah, you can make your choice. You can stay or you can go back. But if I go back, it's my last chance. And so the next thing I know, I don't remember making the choice. The next thing I know, I'm waking up to a paramedic looking at me. And she's asking me if there's anybody else in the house because of the amount of blood. They want to make sure there was nobody else. And also, I think it's mostly to check my level of consciousness, right? So they're asking questions to see if I'm coming back and all that stuff. They put a tourniquet on me, put an IV in me, pumped me full of saline solution. I told them that there's nobody there. Same with my wife. They asked my wife too, and they put me in the ambulance, and my blood pressure was 35 over 45, and I had lost most of my blood. I had done a trauma course a couple months later because you have to keep up with being a paramedic. You have to constantly do continuing education. So I did a trauma course, and in that trauma course, they said that amount of blood loss and that low of blood pressure, you're at a 5% chance of survival with interventions, not without you're just dead. And so I got taken to the hospital, and a funny story was while at the hospital, I had told my wife to take my shoes before we went up to surgery. And she's like, why take your shoes? I was like, they're gonna lose my shoes. I know it. And she's like, they're not gonna lose your shoes. It's fine. And so we went up to surgery. Woke up the next morning, no shoes. Another weird part was, so they had been delayed 22 minutes, but another weird part was that I didn't get any transfusions of blood. They just gave me saline solution. It was really weird. Um, with that amount of, they said just because I compensated so well, so I was able to bounce back almost immediately, which was another weird thing, because usually with that, I was in what's called hypovolemic shock. Usually you don't bounce right back because you're missing most of your stuff that helps like your oxygenate everything, because it's just building up your blood pressure. You shouldn't be able to compensate that well. And I did. So they end up not giving me any blood. So yeah, a little weird.
Wow. And you must have lost a lot of blood too, so that's very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. When because you're supposed to estimate, right? And when the paramedic was asked by the triage nurse and the doctor, she's like, I don't know, but it was most of it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was probably multiple liters for sure. It was a lot. Yeah, I'm lucky to be alive.
That's incredible. Well, I'm glad you survived, and it sounds like you had a very transformative experience from all of this. Um, when you originally saw your body and you came to realize that it was yourself that you were looking at, what was your original reaction to this? Was it scary? Were you kind of very matter of fact about it?
So like when I saw my body,
Yeah.
well, I didn't realize it was me at first. So I was just kind of like staring at it. It was kind of like removed, kind of just going, huh, that's weird. That guy looks like shit. I didn't really have any emotions for it. It was just kind of like, huh. And then once I realized it was me, then like everything else happened. So yeah, I didn't really have yeah, that's weird. Yeah, I've never really thought about that. Yeah, I didn't really have any feelings about it, just going,
When you were on the other side and you said you heard a language that was different than English, but you understood it, did this seem like more of a more true language or potentially a more true existence as a whole?
it sure seemed like a real language. Um, like now, like it was easier to recall years ago. For That was the one thing that seems to have faded. Um, is the actual like how it sounded or mentally sounded. Um, like I don't even think I could replicate it. I guess maybe it might have been more of a feeling that they were speaking in a language, and then it was getting translated. It could have even been like if you're trying to if you have like a whole dense amount of information and you're trying to simplify it, that could have even been it. It could have been maybe the reason I couldn't understand it or anything is that it was like I was getting like everything all at once, and then it was getting translated for me because it was over an overwhelming amount of information. That could have been it too.
Yeah, some people say it's like they're receiving a download of sorts. So maybe it was like a compressed zip file or something.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was trying to get at. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I've never even thought about that. That was a good question. Damn. Yeah, for some reason it feels like, yeah, maybe the reason I couldn't understand it, it might have been English, who knows? But maybe it was because it was like a whole bunch of things all at once, like a packet, and then it got unfolded, and that was like, but at the same time, I don't know. Yeah, hmm. I'm gonna really have to think about that one. Actually, that's a good question. Huh.
That's one to ponder.
Yeah.
When you were on the other side, you said you came to a library and saw all of these enormous books.
Mhm.
Did you feel as though you were allowed to read these? Or let me be more specific. Do you think that when you get to the other side, officially, permanently, that we're allowed to read these books?
Uh, so like before this, I didn't know anything. Before 2020, I wasn't really into any of this stuff. I was kind of into UFOs and stuff. But since this, then it's been like I've been diving into a whole bunch of the different things, including like shamanism, hermeticism, um, Taoism, Buddhism, that sort of stuff. And the one thing that seems to be its closest to is called the Akashic records or the Akashic field. And from their point of view, it seems like that you can access at any time. You don't need to be on the other side. That once you develop your mind enough to be able to astral travel, then and have an out of body experience. And once you're able to control it and master it, you can just go visit this library anytime. Um, but I've been there again. Well, it wasn't exactly the same place. It was a different, but it was like that same sort of feel with books. When I had a regression in September of 2023, I felt like I needed to do something, and I needed to. Felt like I had like a block, and I needed to do something. So I joined an Essence of Being, which was Darren. I don't know if you know Darren King from Liminal Frames. He's like a podcaster, and on he had a class going which was called Essence of Being, which was like about expanding consciousness and trying to um, one of the big tenets was like radical honesty and about meditations and stuff, because I've been doing meditations, um, but I wasn't like super good at it or anything. And then at the same time, I end up going and doing a regression, uh, which was supposed to, I didn't know what to do. I was wondering if I should go revisit that side or something. And what she suggested was, how about we just we can do what is called like as exploratory regression, which is you get hypnotized and then you just see what happens. And so when I was there, we did it over Zoom, and she hypnotized me, and I went to my favorite place, which is my family has some land up in northern Alberta, and I just pictured sitting there by the fire. I stood up and I walked down our tractor trail that we have there, and kept walking, and then all of a sudden this doorway appears, that's kind of like it's wooden. It's kind of like the Hobbit door from Lord of the Rings and stuff, but it was like old, really old, and had like vines and moss growing on it and everything. And I went to open it, so I opened it and I stepped through, and it was all black, and it was all black. And I was talking to her, and I remember going, I said to her, I was like, I can't see anything. She was like, well, just let it happen. Just let your mind fill it in. All of a sudden, I was looking down, and I had relaxed and stopped trying to like think of something. I just kind of like relaxed, and the ground started filling in. And it was all sand. And then a palm tree showed up like right in front of me. I was right beside a palm tree. And then further down, I could see the pyramids. And I've never been to Egypt or anything, but I've always been interested in it. To be honest, I never thought I was going to have a regression with being in Egypt. It wasn't on the docket kind of thing. And so I could see like this giant pyramid with a couple other ones. And then she asked me, "Is there?" And it was super hot. The sun was like high in the sky. It was really golden color. And then she asked me if there was anybody around me, and I could feel somebody. Again, and like if you've never had these experiences, it's really weird trying to describe it to people, but you get this feeling that you're not alone. And I said, "Yeah, I don't think I'm alone." And she said, "Can you see him or her?" And I was able to look over, and I could see this knee, and it was a brown knee, and there's like this white tunic with gold and blue threads. And then I was able to start looking up slowly, and this I could see like his it was a male, well muscled, and it went up his torso, and then and his shoulders, and then all of a sudden it was this. I got to his head, and it was a damn bird head. And before this, before the a couple months before this, I had a lifelong fear of birds. Like I had a phobia of birds. I'd knocked over my kid one time because a budgie flew at me, or almost knocked her over.
Oh, bro,
Because
I love birds. I'm the opposite.
no, and I was, but a couple months later, or like a couple months before this, my dad and I were at the farm, and we are sitting around the fire, and we had smoked a little bit of weed, not like a crazy amount, like just a little bit, right? And all of a sudden, all these birds started surrounding us in the trees, and I was like, well, that's kind of neat. They're nice and far away, but then it was like started with 10, and then 20, and then 30 and 40 and 50, and then it started getting like There was like probably a couple hundred birds of all different species. There was eagles, crows, like everything. And I'm terrified of birds, and this really was freaking me out. And I was like, Dad and I weren't saying anything. And I broke the silence, and I was staring straight up, and I was like, "You see this, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah." It's still one of the weirdest experiences I've ever had. But after that, I wasn't afraid of birds. So thank goodness. Because I would have freaked out when I saw this guy, because he had a huge head. So his head was much bigger than mine. It was like this, and this big giant bird beak. And so she asked me if I can communicate with him, and I said, "Who are you?" And his beak, his mouth was moving, but I couldn't hear him. And I was like, "Oh, I can't hear him." And she's like, "Well, ask him to see if he can help you hear him." And so I asked him, and he puts his finger on my temple. And then all of a sudden, I get the most intense shooting pain, like a knife been stabbing into my temple. And it was like getting electrocuted, stabbed all at the same time. And it was like the worst pain. And I'm telling this to Robin, like, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. And she goes, "Well, don't, uh, just tell him to stop. It's not working." So I said, "Let's stop." And it instantly stops. And he goes, so he starts miming for me. I ask him what his name is. And it doesn't really clue in that I started understanding him right away, but he's like Ra. And I was like, the Egyptian god. I don't know much. I didn't at that time. I didn't know much about Egyptian gods other than Stargate. Um, and then he stood up, and he grabbed my hand, and we started walking away from the palm tree to this little. There was like this plastic. Well, it wasn't plastic, but it was like a floating chalkboard, but it was clear. Um, and there was a bunch of people lounging around. Like one was like playing with sand and just kind of bored, and one was laying like this, and they were all just kind of waiting for something. And he goes over, and he grabs a piece of chalk, and he starts going like this, and he's drawing this circle, and he draws another circle, a smaller circle in the middle, and he draws a line in between. And he's like this, like, and I'm trying to think, and I guess like, is it grounding? And he goes like this. Like, good job. And the people that are lounging around are like, "Oh, the dummy got it." uh, and and then I turned into a child. So it was weird. Like, I got like a glimpse of myself, but I looked like an Egyptian child, and I was small. Um, and then I was back into my like first person view. And he held out his hands, and I grabbed his hands, and then we started floating up into the sky, uh, and the Earth started getting smaller and smaller, and it was like we were zooming out, but we weren't moving. And like all the stars started collapsing into galaxies, and there was a bunch of galaxies around us. And then at this point, I could see it in third person view. So it was a little weird. It would switch between third person view and first person view. It was kind of weird. So we were both floating there, and there's all these galaxies around us, and he goes up and he grabs this one galaxy, and he holds it, and he collapses it into this white ball, and he hands it to me, and I'm looking at it. And she asks, like, ask him what it's for, because I'm describing it. So like with regression, you're describing everything as it's happening. Um, and if you've never done hypnotherapy, it feels like you're fully conscious. It's really weird. It feels like you're not hypnotized. It's really weird to be hypnotized. And so I ask him what it's for, and he goes, "This is for later," and he pushes it into my chest. Later on, now that I've been doing tons of meditations, and I've really got into, I haven't done it for a while, but I was for a period there, I was really doing it pretty hardcore. Turns out that when you're supposed to do a meditation, you can inspect your energy, and everybody has a different energetic signature. Like, if you're a visual person, when you're doing meditations, each individual has a different view of their own energy. And mine turned out I didn't connect the two till a couple months after doing this, that I would form this ball, but it wasn't perfectly white when I started. It was cloudy and really like it would like stormy almost. And then as I was working with my own energy, it became like this perfectly white pearl. And then sometimes it would be stormy depending on my emotions that day. So, anyways, he put it in my chest and we floated back down. And I'm still a child, and he grabbed my hand and we started walking down around there was like this little hill, and we walked down this little hill, and the sun set, and then the lighting turned into like purplish hues. So all the sand dunes and everything, it almost looked like Aladdin, like in the very beginning of Aladdin when Aladdin's looking for the tiger cave. Like it was kind of close to that same kind of feel. And so he grabbed my hand. I was holding his hand, and I was still a child. And we started walking towards this giant pyramid with this giant entrance with this giant archway. And we walk in there, and inside this pyramid, and you couldn't see it was way bigger inside than it was on the outside. And inside this pyramid was you couldn't see the roof because it was so high up. It was obscured and everything was dark. You could just see the floor, and in the main room was like this giant statue, and I couldn't see that. I could only see from the shoulders down. Everything else was like shrouded in darkness. And it was like this giant man holding his hands like this on this throne. It sort of looked like Abe Lincoln's statue, kind of, but it was like an Egyptian garb. And then we sat down in front of it. And he told me he sat with our legs crossed, and he told me to copy him. And at this point, it was starting to. I had already started realize that, oh, I can actually understand him, and he'd been talking to me for a while. It took a while for me to clue in that I was actually hearing him, and he wasn't doing like sign language or like pointing and stuff anymore. And so we sat there, and he told me to do this. So I didn't know at the time, but this is called a mudra. So this particular one is for your throat chakra, which helps you speak. And so if you feel like you have trouble speaking sometimes, if you believe in this stuff, it's usually tied to your throat chakra. So you have an energetic block here. So this is supposed to help that. It's also supposed to help your intuition. We're sitting there, and he tells me to start breathing like at this rapid pace, like super fast. And so I'm essentially hyperventilating, and I start getting dizzy. And I'm like, oh, I'm getting dizzy. He's like, no, that's good. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to spin. And then as I spin, I float out of my body. So it's kind of like Inception. So like I'm already in a like a dream state, and now I'm floating out of my body. So it's like out of a body kind of thing. It's kind of weird. And so I float out, and then I float back down. And he says, "Great job." And I stand up, and he tells me, I say, he wants to go, but I felt really like I wasn't going fast enough in my progression, because that message of like this is your last chance had been like haunting me for so long. Like, am I doing the right choices? I changed my life up to this point like a crazy amount. Like it was like a 180. And I was really trying to figure out everything that had happened since then. And so I felt like I wasn't going fast enough, and it had only been a couple of years, but it felt like I wasn't progressing fast enough. And he says, no, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to do. And I'm proud of you. And it's okay and I just start bawling. And he gave me a hug, and I think it was like it was kind of like what they talk about when you're doing shadow work, or comforting like your inner child kind of thing. Because a lot of us will have issues that we had as children, and it could be as simple as like you got told you weren't allowed to go play outside when you really wanted to, and that just created like a seed, and then it just kind of festered throughout your life, and you didn't really realize it, but it had an effect on you. or it could be something way more traumatic. And so then this really felt like it helped. I like wiped away my tears and got kind of figured out. And grabbed my hand, and then we walked into this other room, and this other room was this golden tree trunk. So there must be there's like a theme for trees, which is really weird, and mushrooms. Trees and mushrooms seem to be like a big theme for me. And there's this golden tree trunk, huge, like it had to be like 30 feet across, and it was going up and it was branching off, and these branches went to these different levels in this pyramid. And there in on the sides of the walls where these branches went to, and it was all golden, was this library, shelves with books, and it was the same books. So I went up, we went up, and you'd step on this golden tree, and it just slide you up. And it was like kind of like those sidewalks at the airports, except it didn't move, you just moved with it. And we went up to this one shelf, and he reached out and he grabbed this book, and he opened it up, and it was on a page that was stopped like halfway through a sentence. And he said, "This is your book," and he closed it and he put it back. And we jumped back on the escalator, the tree escalator. And I said to him, I said, "Does this have to do with Atlantis?" And he turned around, and I don't know why I asked that. I have no idea. He had a thread. He turned around and he had a red thread in his hand, and he went, "It's connected." And that's all he said. I never seem to get answers. It's always just questions. And so we started going down this escalator, down, and into this white room, which used to be my meditation. It was my meditation room that I had created spontaneously during a meditation 6 months before, but I had gotten kicked out of my own meditation room inside my mind. I don't know. And he brought me in. There was two leather chairs, and like kind of like in the Matrix, and he sits down and he lights a cigar. He's a pretty funny dude. And he lights a cigar, and he kind of goes and tells me to go look around and see what he's done to the place. Because when I was in there, I had put in like I had realized I could put in like the 3D objects, a vision board. And so I was making like I had put like 3D objects, like 3D versions of my vision board. So I'd had like a Corvette, and like Hawaii and Egypt and Japan and like that sort of stuff. Like place I wanted to visit, a greenhouse, winning the lottery, like a whole bunch of like materialistic stuff, right?
Yeah.
And he went, and I went over there and I looked, and he swiped away all the all the materialistic stuff, and I was only left with like I think I had like a marriage, and because I'm divorced, a marriage and family, and a podcast, and some greenhouses and stuff. But like he left the locations interesting, but like anything to do with like money or like cars or anything, because I had like a Corvette and McLaren, like the fun things, right? Yeah, those were all gone. And then on my shelf, there was a shelf with books numbered 1 through 37. And then there was a book down on the ground in the box that I'd put there that was specifically for this workplace I had worked that I hated. I took that out and I put it back on my shelf. And then beside it, there was this table that I hadn't put in there. There was this table, and on it's like one of those old style standing tables where you'd write. And there was this quill pen in a inkwell, and on there was my book. And then I looked over, and this outline, kind of like a ghost car in a video game, of my body sitting in the lotus position with the mudra, was there. And I was like, "Oh, this must be where and it was a big arrow blinking at it." So, like, just in case you didn't get it, like, this is it. Like, and right there. And I was like, "Oh, I must need to meditate there." And he's like, "Yep." And he he's like, "Okay, I gotta show you something else." And we started zooming out, and we zoomed out of of this white room, and I zoomed out, zoomed out, zoomed out, and you could see the earth, and there's all these different little white rooms, like these little bubbles, white bubbles all over the earth, and some of them were filled, and then some of them were empty. And he didn't really say anything. He just it kind of had this feeling like um, that this is something that most people have to do. And then it kept zooming out, and I felt like this connection. And then we went back. And so then he's like, okay, I'm gonna leave. So he leaves, goes through the door, and there's this rectangular window to the left, and you can tell I'm under the ocean. And I'm looking around. I'm like, I can't really see anything. And this list appears beside the doorway, and it's numbered 1 to 100. And it fills in. So one is like I have to eat healthy. Number two is don't worry about body image. Number three is do yoga. Number four is blank, and number five is meditate. And I was saying this to the hypnotist. I was like, there's five. She's like, oh, you only listed four. And I was like, oh, number four is blank. And I'm thinking about, and I was like, oh, it's an OBE, an out of body experience. I have to have those. And so then all of a sudden it fills in. And then right behind me, I turn around and there's this, it looked like the Xbox, pretty close, where it says achievement unlocked. So it was pretty funny, actually. And so an achievement unlocked, and I was like, okay. And then I was just kind of sitting there, kind of, I was getting asked if she was asking me if there's anything else, and I was like, I don't know. And then all of a sudden, I started zooming out again, zooming out, zooming out, zooming out, until I zoomed out so far that I was in this white space. But it felt like not like this white room, because it felt like it's a dome kind of thing. But there, it just felt like you couldn't feel the edges, and like it felt like infinity both ways. And all I see in front of me is this little girl, but she looks like a doll, and she's about like this tall. And she has like a little dress and black hair, and she's facing away from me. And then all of a sudden she turns around. And again, this one is in third person, which is again, it's disconcerting how it kept flipping. And she turns around, she looks at me, and she's like, "You're not supposed to be here." And all of a sudden, I get this overwhelming sense of pain, and I felt like I was getting squished and electrocuted all at the same time. And I was yelling. I was like, "It hurts! It hurts! It hurts!" And the hypnotist tells me, she's like, "There's a door. Go to the door." And I looked to my left, and there a doorway appeared, kind of like the holodeck. And I went through the door, and I was back in my meditation room. Um, Raw ended up swimming by the window, and he's like, and then he swam off, and then the regression ended.
That would be a perfect tattoo. That two thumbs up seems to be like a theme, huh?
I never thought, but I've been thinking about getting another tattoo, because I have like this one, but I've been really wanting another tattoo. I kind of like that idea, actually.
Hey, it could be the one.
Yeah, I don't think it was a past life. I don't know what it was, to be honest. I don't know what it was. My only goal was that I needed something to help me move forward, because it felt like I was stuck. And then so I got a list. And Diana Pasulka, she's a professor. I was just part of her protocols class, and most of her protocols actually line up with mine, other than my OBE thing. And it's kind of interesting too that it was a list of 1 to 100, and I've only done the first five. Well, I haven't even done like an OBE or anything yet, but I'm still working on eating healthy, and stop worrying about body image. And then like I pretty much had to reset, because I realized like those two things are way harder than I ever thought. And that the other ones are like, you have to fix your foundation before you can start building anew. And I think that's what I got from this was that I need to really go back to basics and really fix those things first, and then start continuing along this journey, because there's things that you need to fix first, like doing shadow work and figuring out your own patterns before you should start moving forward. Because once you start moving forward, there's so many other things that can manifest in your reality, kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting, like you said earlier, how maybe potentially one thing from childhood could be kind of that seed that grows into a bigger tree of all these branch offs that could actually have a significant effect on the way you live your life as an adult or something like this.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually a good metaphor of like to see the like a tree. Maybe that's I never even thought about that, but maybe that's maybe why I kept getting these tree metaphors. Or not metaphors, but there seems to be like a pattern of trees. Maybe that's what it is these seeds that have grown into this all these different choices and life paths. Huh. It's an interesting way to think about that. Thank you.
Got you. That's the way I think too. Every time I'm trying to put the puzzle together, it's like I have this tree and then there's the branches. They have branch offs. Sometimes you chop some of them off and I don't know, it's all trees.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of makes sense. It's kind of like quantum physics almost, because like parallel universes and yeah, everything everywhere all at once, and how reality, like every choice that we want to make or have made, is actually in another reality, and it's amazing how much it could branch off just by making instead of turning left, you went right. It's uh you could almost get lost in trying to think of all the choices that you have made if you look back and how different your life could be depending on what choices you made.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's nice to reflect, but sometimes it's good to not always harp on the past for that
That's
exact
right.
reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's you got to move forward and be comfortable with your choices, and then um yeah, really embrace the what could be.
Do you believe there's a reason that we don't remember all of the secrets that we see on the other side?
I can't speak for anybody else that's had the an NDE or anything like that. Because there seems to be like I haven't watched very many actually, to be honest. I've only watched since I've started doing these and telling my own story. It's only now that I've started watching a couple. But from what I can see, there seems to be like a lot of people like they get like a lot of like answers, and all I end up with was like a threat, like this is your last chance. I think for my, I think it's really personal, and I think it's whatever works and to instigate the change that you need to do for that person. And so in my case, what felt like a threat, like a guillotine hanging over me, like this is your last chance, I needed that in order to make the changes in my life that I needed to. I ended up getting divorced. I now had a new job. I'm a different person. Like I'm not even close to the same person. I think for myself that if I had known more, then that would have influenced my own choices. And then that's not really free will, because you're that would influence you. They influenced me enough that I knew I had to make a change, but I didn't have an inkling of what was coming. And I would have never guessed what has happened so far. Like my life is way different than I ever guessed. I would have never guessed it. Um, but I think if I got told more, then that would have influenced my own choices. And then maybe that wouldn't have happened. And maybe I would have ended up messing it up because I was like second guessing every choice way too much about trying to get to this one specific outcome. And so that's where I land on this after I've thought about this for since my NDE.
That makes a lot of sense, honestly. Almost if there's too much interference, is it going to kind of interrupt that those potentials? So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you think about frequencies and I think a lot of things in like frequencies now, that interfere you'd almost create like an interference pattern in all your different choices.
all right, Sean. So last but not least, my friend, it's been an absolute pleasure. I have one more question for you.
Sounds
Um,
good.
so how has this experience changed your perspective on the world or your perception on life itself?
Uh, I view this has taken a lot of soul searching. So after my NDE, it was like it was not the bottom for me. It wasn't like the bottom of the barrel kind of thing. Like I kept sliding for quite a while, even after this. Like life seemed to get shittier and shittier. And then I finally hit bottom, and then I slowly started climbing back out. Um, if you'd asked me last year, I would have had a totally different perspective and a totally different answer than what I'm gonna say, which is I kind of view right now, um, kind of like what Dolores Cannon says. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dolores Cannon, but it's kind of like a training or a school, and I try to view our lives less like we're getting like life is out to get us, and more like life is out to teach us. And so, and we're more like little kindergartners or little grade runners and stuff. And obstacles are actually supposed to be fun. And you're supposed to have fun getting over these obstacles in your life. And so I try to view, I don't just enjoy the good times because I'm having a lot of great times now, which I wasn't having previously. But I'm also trying to enjoy the shittier times or the times that are stressful, or and try to remember that these these barriers and obstacles that are put in front of us are meant to be overcome, and by overcoming you become stronger and you become like a better person. And all of these barriers that I've gone through in my life allows me to be more empathetic with others, because I know what they're talking about, like if they've had like certain things like with depression or um a whole bunch of like I've had a lot of life experiences now that I can emphasize, be like, I can understand people now, which I never did have before that. So that's how I kind of view life now. It's more of a game, and more of uh, try to enjoy it way more than going to like, when's this shit gonna end?
I can certainly agree with that. It seems as though we're here to learn something, and maybe we're here to learn different things. That's yet to be known. Sean also has a YouTube channel, which is amazing, and you should check it out. It's called Our Collective Experiences. So hit him up there. We will put the link in the description. We'll put all the ways you can contact him there. Sean, thank you so much for your time, man. This has been an absolute pleasure. So I can't wait to speak again. And if there's any last words you want to say to the audience, feel free.
Uh, Thanks for having me on. It was super fun, actually. It's great to chat with you. I would say for my last words that if it feels like you're uh, like if it's really, really difficult right now, Steve Harvey has a great quote about that you have 100% success rate at getting through things, and just always remember you will get through it. Sometimes you just have to be able to bend instead of break. Um, and that on the other side of all these trials and obstacles and everything is a whole bunch of fun.
Amazing. I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time, man. I appreciate it. And I
Thank
hope
you.
everyone enjoyed. Hit up Sean on his channel. His channel is amazing. It's like watching a movie. You're going to be very impressed.
Thanks.
All right. Well, to the audience, peace out, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.